Hello once again, this is Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College. Once again, I'm going to be giving you a couple prequel type of lectures. These will be again for the 152, 167 Ajax and JavaScript website development and 152, 164 design and implementation projects. So let's change this here from this. Let's just call this HTML5 intro, and we'll call this spring 2016. Slideshow 1 is fine. Okay, so to begin then, there's about 25 slides in here. If you haven't heard the history of this, what had happened was there was HTML 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.01, 4.1. Then a decision was basically made that there wasn't going to be any more HTML, no more new versions. They were instead going to go to XML. All right, and XML was the extensible markup language, and the idea, this says XHTML, but it really was XML that they were going to. And the difference between HTML and XML is with XML you make your own tags. All right, well, although XML is still used, and it's used a lot depending on what, the type of organization you're talking about, it never quite caught on the way people thought it would. So two different organizations, basically as it says there, began as two specifications, but if we move up, what happened was about, I don't know, somewhere 10 to 15 years ago, somewhere around there, the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, and the Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group, typically called WATWG, decided that they were going to come up with a new version of HTML. Well, they at first were not working together, all right, because you had the W3C stuff and you had the WATWG stuff, but then they decided they were going to work together. And as you can see here, the idea was to make pages that were easier to code, easier to use, and more semantically accessible. Now if I click that link, what you're going to see in just a second is this is just an article that I found online, why HTML5 is more semantic. It's a little dated, it's December 2012, but again, the idea is the tags that are in there make sense. Okay, at least hopefully they make sense to people. Web page development must be easy as possible for the exploding mobile web market. I don't think we have to talk about that. The idea is to future-proof a website. So eventually, when older versions of browsers, especially pre-IE9, when those disappear, all the what do we call it? I'm not even sure of a good name. They call them here fallbacks and polyfills, but the idea is the way that those browsers are being kind of kept on life support is with this stuff. So if you want more, you can take a look at that. Now this is pretty much what a basic HTML5 template now looks like. And do you need all that stuff? No. All right. But when we take it from the top, we've got our doc type statement, our HTML statement, and again, the lang equals en is recommended but not required. Our beginning head, our ending head. Inside of the head, we've got our char set, our title statement, some more meta tags, typically with a description, with an author. And again, these meta tags, why are they used? They're used for search engine optimization and to make it easier for the system. Adding our style sheets. This is called here, this is an HTML5 Shiv. So this says if you're using IE and you're using a version that's less than IE9, don't let these new HTML5 tags break the page, so to speak. Then we've got our body contact and finally our ending HTML tag. This is the same thing. All that's been added is this line right here. So if we want to add jQuery. Okay? All right, so as it says, let's break this down. So what's all in here? Well, you'll notice that back in the olden days, there were three different doc types that we had. Okay? And I can bring that up. And when you look at these, I don't know if there's any of the older ones are shown here. Now here's what they used to look like. So that was strict, so you can see how big that is. This one, transitional, is even bigger. That was this one. And this one is frame set. Well, now all you have to key in is this. And the doc type can be an upper or lowercase. I always put mine in lowercase. But what's the difference? Well, this is for HTML5. What this says is do not allow any deprecated elements back, that are available in HTML. Don't let any deprecated elements be used. Well, what are those deprecated elements? Well, someplace in my mess here. If you look in here, and this is just from W3 Schools tags, and it's actually got them by function, what you'll notice is a lot of these tags, not make sure you can say a lot, maybe 10% or more, not supported in HTML5. So the idea is those tags are deprecated. You shouldn't use them anymore. Also, you'll notice that there are several tags that have the HTML5 logo on them, which means they're new to HTML5. All right. So with strict, you couldn't use any of those deprecated tags. With transitional, all right, that said that you can basically use deprecated tags. So these are kind of the opposites of one another. And then sort of in the middle is frame sets, which says it's like transitional, all right? And what I'm saying, it's more like strict, all right? Well, I shouldn't say that. If you look in here, transitional does not allow frame sets, and frame sets is equal to transitional but allows frame sets. So in other words, frame set allows everything. All right, transitional, I didn't even think this was the case, but evidently, because I'll defer to W3 Schools. But now that's all been replaced with just this. All right, you'll still see the other ones out there, especially on older sites, but they're now no longer needed. So, all right, with HTML5 again, either of these or any derivation of the case. So if you want an uppercase D and the lowercase whatever, you can do it any way you want. Again, there is no XML namespace attribute now in HTML5, and that lang equal en is recommended, again, to keep it as easy as possible for the browser, but it's not mandatory. All right, the head section, you know by now, or you should know that in the head section, that's all the stuff that doesn't appear on the web page. Before HTML5, you had a char set that looked something like this. Now it's been replaced and shortened to this. All right. That HTML5 Shiv, I already mentioned it to you. If you want more on the Shiv, why it was written, who wrote it, etc., there's the story of the HTML5 Shiv. So you can go and take a look at that if you have a desire to do so. All right. Notice here, if you don't use a doc type statement, what happens is it sends a signal to the browser, as it says, to go into what's called Quirks mode. And if you want more on that, as opposed to standards mode, as you can see right there, then what you can do is you can look at the hyperlinks. All right? Now, I've shown this to my classes. You may or may not have seen it, but this is a very important site, caniuse.com. Because what it does is it allows you to go and grab any CSS. So let's say I come in here and CSS animation. So I click on that. And what that says is, look, this is supported in everything that's green and not supported in anything that's red. And you may have marginal support if something has yellow in it. All right? But caniuse.com is a nice, good, important site. There's also, this is pretty much, although this book's a little dated now, this Dive into HTML5.info. This is an actual online text that's been written by Mark Pilgrim, and it was written for O'Reilly Publications. But you notice there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. Okay? So it's all chapter based. And I've read it, I've actually used it for classes It's been years since I've done that, but I have. And it's a very well-written book. All right. Again, you can still use pre-HTML5 tags and syntax if you want to, but you typically won't want to. There is an HTML5 validator. All right. It's HTML5. It's HTML5.validator.nu. Okay. So it's not the W3C validator, the regular one. This is a quote new one, unquote. I don't know why it's not opening, but it's not. All right. And I shouldn't have done that. Probably because I have way too much stuff open right now, as you can see. So let's close. Let's end that task there. And I don't know if that's going to clear it up. No, it's not. Doggone it, I didn't want to. Well, I apologize for this. Evidently I screwed up PowerPoint. So I'll bring it back up again. Not a problem. Good. It's trying to recover it itself anyway, so that's good. Here. Close here. Probably have lost my changes now, but that's life. No, I think I have my changes. Good. All right. A couple recommendations here. Establish a standard and stick to it. I've said this to my classes before, that even a bad standard is better than no standard at all. I recommend using lowercase for all elements in all attributes. I always recommend that content should be closed. All right? Don't program in a sloppy way. Omit trailing slashes from elements with no content. Don't be redundant. Use this. Don't use checked equal checked, even though it still works, but this is the old school way of doing it. Always use quotes for attributes, even though they're no longer required. Remember, this all is about semantics. This is taken right from Wikipedia. Semantics, basically, the idea is the tags mean something. Okay, if you want more, you can click on any one of those. Now, as it says, most HTML5 documents contain some, to most, to all of the following elements. If you click on, I'll just click on the first one here, and you'll notice that it'll get me out to HTML5 Doctor, which is just a terrific site if you want to learn more about the different HTML navigational elements. These are all from HTML5 Doctor. All right, so the header element, as it says, it's a group of introductory or navigational aids. It replaces the classic div ID equal header. Often used to include introductory content or navigational aids rather. Section. Any generic section of a document or an application. Article. A self-contained composition in a document page, etc. The bad thing is, to some people when they write web pages, oh, this belongs in a section and I need articles within it. Other people write articles with sections within it. And neither is right and neither is wrong. Okay? Nav is typically for your navigation. All right? again, quite often on the top of the page. An aside is an article that really could stand on its own. As it says, it's tangentially related. For instance, over the weekend, the Packers beat the Washington Redskins. And let's say that after that, there was, who had a really good game for the Packers? Aaron Rodgers. Okay, and now there's a rumor that Aaron Rodgers supposedly is engaged to his girlfriend, Olivia Munn. And whether or not he is, let's just suppose for a second that in the Milwaukee Journal on Monday morning after the Packer game on Sunday, there was a big article on the front page. It took up the top half of the front page, almost all of it. And Packers beat Redskins 35-18 or whatever the heck it was. I think it was 18. Okay, so then along the side, they run an article, is Aaron Rodgers really getting married? It's an article that's sort of related, but yet really could have stood on its own. That's an aside. Footers, all right. The idea now is with headers and footers, you can have multiple of them on the page if you need to. Footers are typically, though, associated with something being on the bottom of the page. All right, if you want a real-life example of this stuff, okay, let's see if this brings it up. Here's one that's actually from a book that's online that you can get at least part of it. And if you notice, the page actually is. Okay, so there's interaction on the web page itself. You can see it there. This moves around as you come over here. This moves around, etc. This is from a book, an HTML5 book that's available from SitePoint. All right, and this is the actual book if you're interested in that. It's a little bit dated, but it's a good book, and all the code is here. So if you wanted to build that one you just saw yourself, you could do that. This is an article that's probably 5 or 10 years old, but it's from IBM, and I found it and I've used it before, and it's just a very well done, very well written article. And there's a bunch of code that's in it too. Again, they explain what all these different tags are that I've explained to you already, and it goes through and it builds an actual working example. And the problem is, I think with this, I think this is just the code for downloading it. So let's see, and I don't want to go bring it up right now. So that's pretty much it for this first part. So I'm going to come back in just a second. Nope, not with that. I'm going to come back with the second part. And I'll be back with that in just a couple minutes.